I'm Marilyn Priel. Autism disorder, with its range of symptoms, is increasing. What it is and how one young girl dealt with it will be the subject on this program for the better part. Stay tuned. My guest has traveled from Los Angeles, California, to tell her story to us. It's an ongoing story about her autism and about finding a way to get people to listen to her particular needs for treatment. She found her voice, has written a book about it, and is a sought-after speaker for large groups. I'm happy to introduce Christine Motukani. Welcome, Christine. I'm so happy you're going to be on this program.
Thank you, Marilyn, for having me on the show. It is a great honor.
How and when were you diagnosed with autism?
I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4 years old. My parents noticed things like I wasn't talking as much as the other kids. I was delayed in speech. I wasn't playing with the other kids. I was showing fascination with objects instead. Like, for instance, when I was in daycare, I would play with the tail of a rocking horse than with the other children. I didn't have that social awareness. Like, when people called my name, I didn't respond. And I did repetitive movements like toe walking, and I was hyperactive. Like, I couldn't sit still for long periods of time.
Would you tell us, because autism has such a wide-ranging spectrum of symptoms, would you tell us some of those and tell us about autism, if you would, please?
Like you said, Marilyn, it is a spectrum disorder. There's people who will never gain the ability to talk. They have self-injurious behaviors. They may not be able to live on their own. While there's some that you can't even tell from looking at them that they have autism, but they just struggle more with social situations and sensory stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it affects social, it affects communication, it affects the sensory system, and then some of them have motor problems. It is a very complex disorder because one person with autism could have different symptoms than another person with autism. There's a saying in the autism community, if you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism.
Because nobody is the same. And of course, it has nothing to do with intelligence because they're all
No.
very bright people. It's a neurological thing, is it, somewhat, that they think that causes this, perhaps?
There's different causes. There could be, it's not just the vaccines as widely publicized.
Mm-hmm.
It could be environmental, genetics.
Mm-hmm.
It has multiple causes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're right. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It doesn't affect intelligence, even though there could be
Mm-hmm.
some that suffer from intellectual disability. But I really believe, even in the more impacted individuals, that there is intelligence inside because there are some nonverbal people with autism that learn how to type and use a keyboard to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've made the acquaintance of several autistic people, and they're quite bright. They just have these little quirks and things that go on with them that make life difficult for them sometimes. Well, now, once you were diagnosed, did you enter school, and did you get any special schooling to help you with your, I noticed in your book, you termed it disability. I don't know if that's a word that is good for me to use, but you did have some symptoms that you need to work and make them a little bit better. And you went to school. Was it special schools for this?
When I was in preschool, I was like in a special education classroom. I was not even mainstreamed, but My mom figured I wasn't making progress in that classroom because they said I need to get held back a year. So she sent me to a 6-year program to UCLA where I made a huge amount of progress. If anything, I was a different kid because it helped me stay still. So it helped me learn to function in a regular classroom. Because in a regular classroom, you can't be moving around or else you'll be disrupting the other children. That's why sometimes people get placed in special ed classrooms.
Did they give you special exercises or special
No,
things to do to help you learn these coping methods?
well, they taught me like to improve my speech and
Oh, mm-hmm.
different skills. And in kindergarten, I was placed in a pilot program for kids with autism for part of the year, but they wanted to do a trial run on me of how I would do in a regular classroom. And the teacher really liked me, and she said I think she could be mainstream. So by first grade, I was fully mainstream, no special ed classes, and with a part-time aide. And ever since then, I never received any special schooling, except for maybe like pull-out sessions like speech.
Mm-hmm. They
But
pulled you out of class to go to the speech.
yeah,
Uh-huh. And you said that you had an aide that would be in the classroom with you. Would this aide like help you with your actual schoolwork, or what was that aide's job, to put it simply?
well, like when I was younger, she would help me with academics, but mostly to stay on task. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but as I got older, it became more teaching social skills and emotional regulation, like when I
Mm-hmm.
got to middle school and high school.
So academically was easier for you than the social skills and the
Yes.
coping skills. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Uh, did you feel that the teachers in the mainstream had enough understanding of what your problems were, and did you feel that they were um, skilled in understanding your special needs?
For the most part, with the exception of a few teachers, I felt the teachers in the mainstream really got me and really individualized um, to my needs and accommodated me. If anything, I felt that the regular education teachers really got me better than the special ed teachers because I found them to be more flexible, which is really interesting because, you know, they're not trained in like special ed. You would think the special ed teachers would get it, but it was the regular teachers actually got me better, which
Maybe
is
because
surprising.
make you feel more like everybody else to some extent, I
Yeah,
guess. Huh?
they don't look at it, oh, this person is disabled, kind
Mm-hmm.
of a thing.
Mm-hmm. I know that your mother did a lot of work with you. Did she work at home with you on any particular coping skills, or uh, even your academic work?
Well, actually, she left her job in sales and marketing at a gas company to help me when I first got diagnosed. Like, she helped me with, like, you know, learning to speak, and she worked with me on, like, learning how to handwrite. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things you do if you want to get mainstream, you got to learn how to handwrite. So she helped me write the alphabets. She worked really hard
Mm-hmm.
on me, even though at times when I was little I didn't like it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it helped me in the long run with my academics. It helped jumpstart it.
Were there any problems at home with you coping with um, the different symptoms that you had? Was your home life easy for you, or was the school easier for you as far as um, living with your symptoms and so forth?
I felt home was a little bit easier
Mm-hmm.
because I could be more of myself than
Mm-hmm.
at school.
Mm-hmm. Was there any assistance for your parents as far as caregivers? Um, Anybody come in and help them out at home?
Uh, well, when I got diagnosed, I was admitted to the California Regional Center system, and what they do is they provide funding for respite care in camps, even though we really didn't utilize them too, except for the camps. We used they helped pay for the camps I went to when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger. But as far as when it comes to therapies and other services that I need, and even up to now, we pay for it out of our own pocket. It all comes out of our pocket because back then insurance didn't fund autism related therapies like they do now.
And there was no government agencies to help your family financially then?
Well, there is and there isn't. So it's a really complicated situation.
I guess the special ed classes and maybe the speech therapy within the school would be
Yeah, like the
covered.
school
Uh-huh.
district system,
Mm-hmm.
it's funded by the
Mm-hmm.
state, so they pay for
Mm-hmm.
like the aid and the speech
Mm-hmm.
therapists and all the services I
Mm-hmm.
got.
How were you treated by the other children in grade school?
If at an elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
life was pretty good. I made friends easily. The children accepted me. I was never bullied. I was invited to birthday parties. In fifth grade, I hung out with the popular kids because they liked my jokes and I would tell them jokes, and they actually wanted me to come to their birthday party. So it was pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, childhood was hard from the start because they get bullied and
Mm-hmm.
they know that there was something different about them early on, where I didn't know about that until fifth grade. There was something not quite right with me.
You didn't realize that you had these extra little physical problems then. You're not aware of that at
Or
that point.
quirks
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until later, like fifth grade,
Mm-hmm.
when everybody was starting a little bit change a little bit.
Mm-hmm. The children never said anything to you though, or teased you?
No,
That's great.
not that I
That's
was aware of.
And you grew up down in L.A., Los Angeles area.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's correct.
And so you had a good social life then. And did your family, I know that you were very, very close with both sets of grandparents. So you had a very nice loving home environment and everything. I've seen pictures in your book with your grandparents, and you all traveled and had parties and did really nice things. What were your teen years like?
My teen years, that's when things started to change because I moved to a different school district, so I didn't know anybody. Everybody knew each other from elementary school, so it was kind of like I felt like a fish out of the water, and it became all about like who was cool and being part of a group, because in elementary school friendships is like, you know, who's a good playmate. It's all about like
Mm-hmm.
playing, but
Mm-hmm.
in middle school it becomes more emotional. It's complex.
Mm-hmm.
And then people kind of, they talk badly about it. That's when, you know, people's prejudice start to form,
Mm-hmm.
like their adult prejudice. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get all of the coolness factors. So I've pretty much preferred to hang out with older people. And it was also a tumultuous time for me, like middle school, because I also was gaining more aware of people who didn't understand me, and I felt that people were trying to make me into something I wasn't. So because of that, I felt my self-esteem took a dive. I felt very devalued as a person. It wasn't until like my therapist helped me build my self-esteem back, because one of the things that I would do now because of that experience is I would keep asking people for permission. Is it okay to have these feelings? Like feel like I basically have to feel like I have to ask permission. Is it for my feelings?
Because you probably had been coached a lot on how to
What's
deal.
appropriate? Yeah.
Right, yes. Well, high school is not easy for anyone. There's so much peer pressure. And then you were dealing with extra, even your book says working the double shift, because not only were you trying to academically do well, which you did very well in school, but you were dealing with being a teenager, and then your specific needs with your autism. So you really were on overload there going to high school. And now about fashion, how did you try and dress like the other kids, or were you more independent and wanted to do your own thing?
Well, in middle school, I wanted to become this individualized. Like, I didn't really care about fashion, but going into high school, I started to care a little bit more about fashion. If anything, I kind of overdid it because I was asking for expensive clothes
Oh,
because I wanted to fit in. But so high school was a little bit better for me than middle school.
did you actually, because I'm thinking of people with Asperger's who are the autism, they're very brilliant, but their social skills, they don't quite understand why people conduct themselves a certain way. Did you have any of that in developing your social skills? Did you understand it, or
I
just didn't
understand some
care
of it,
to do
but I
it?
didn't really get it, especially like the age appropriate interest. I thought, why is that there? Like, I'm not hurting anybody with that.
So you
It's
had
just to
some
make me look cooler and more popular.
okay,
And
I see. So you had some more youthful interest at that time than the people your age.
yes,
Uh-huh. I know that you did an awful lot of travel. In your book, I see so many pictures of you family. Looks like you've been in so many foreign countries and so forth. Do you think that was helpful for you in getting out and seeing the world and being around different kinds of people and cultures?
I think it was helpful because you get to see how different countries do things.
Hmm.
And it just shows that the norms that we have here are just subjective because people like in places like Italy may have a different way of doing things than people
Hmm.
here.
When you were in school, you did have to speak up for yourself when you felt you were not getting the proper guidance that you needed. I think you did this in high school and possibly junior high. I may be wrong, but I know that you felt that you were maybe getting a cookie cutter type of teaching, and you knew that you had special things that you wanted help with, and you advocated for yourself. Would you tell me about how you became an advocate for your own special requirements?
Because my therapist was the one who really opened that door for me. She wanted to teach me self advocacy skills. She's like asking me, what do you want? What do you want to talk about during our sessions? And she asked me to keep a journal. And eventually, I was able to find my voice saying, I know what I want. But I was always this child who knew what she wanted. Like, I was pretty strong headed. You could ask my mom.
Hmm.
And but so it was not as difficult as for me as for some other people.
You were not held back. You were allowed at home to speak up and say what you wanted. So
Most of
that
the
helped
time,
you to go out and talk to your teachers. That's wonderful that you
or
could
other
do that.
support.
Uh-huh. And what do you think helped improve you the most, if you can think back of all the things that happened to you growing up and until now? What do you think was most beneficial and most helpful to make you the person that you are today?
Having caring teachers, aides, and my parents being the way they are, like helping me develop a healthy identity
Mm-hmm.
about my autism.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest person I want to give credit to is my therapist who's been working with me for 8 years, since like middle school. She taught me strategies to manage my stress. Like, she came up like a mood thermometer where there's like three moods. Like, she uses colors like green for calm, yellow for little stress, and red means that you're angry or you just lose your temper. And then she came up with something called triggers, which are antecedents or events that cause the stress. And then she taught me that behavior is communication. It's not like somebody who's getting attention or they're bratty. She thinks that, there's something causing that behavior and we got to figure out what it is. So she really took time to know how I thought or processed the world instead of just assuming like this is what you need, and she just consulted with me. So I was just very surprised. It's saying I never had a therapist do this to me before.
She understood, didn't she? She had
Yes.
and knew how to explain it to you to make it work. And so you do then you always are using certain tools then to help you cope and respond and do things that make life easier for you. Do you what do you think that people would be helpful for people today with autism? What would be some things that schools and people could do that would be beneficial for autistic people?
I think that people need to have more compassion and patience and understanding because, for a typical person without any disabilities, they could give you that instant gratification, like they show that they're interested in a conversation and social interaction. But for people with autism, they may not show interest right away because they may not trust you, even though inside they could be really they want to really talk to you, but they may not show interest, especially if they're not in the best mood. They may show that they're aloof or they don't care. So people need to understand that it's not because they don't care, it's because it takes them a while to processing, especially social interactions.
Is there anything you wish you had said that we left out?
Yes, about the developing more meaningful adult programs for
Oh,
older, people
okay. Your age, who still need some.
like we in the areas of education, um, employment, especially housing. Like we
Oh,
need to develop more person-centered programs because I feel like the programs out there that are there for adults are not person-centered. They're very cookie cutter. They try to blend all these disabilities into one umbrella, and unfortunately, that doesn't work, as I've experienced and seen.
yeah.
And we need to develop more apprenticeship programs, like having a mentor, like coach somebody with autism on a job skill because they get to know the weaknesses and strengths of each individual instead of like having them go out, throwing them out to the wolves and finding employment that way. Because people with autism, they have a hard time networking because one of their difficulties is social interaction. So if we can make it easier for them, I think an apprenticeship programs would work for somebody with autism because they get one-on-one help on learning a trade and you are guaranteed a job, which I think most people now they without autism would need, especially with this
Sure.
job market.
Before I talk about this, you're in college now
Yeah.
and you're making very good grades. You made good enough grades to get into college academically.
Yeah.
And where do you go to school?
Loyola Marymount University.
Okay. And what are you studying there?
Psychology.
And you've actually been an advocate there for your special. You've gone in and talked to the hierarchy about your needs that you felt you were not getting fulfilled or things that you felt would be more
Yeah,
beneficial.
especially because you're paying, a large amount of money and you just feel like you're not getting enough. So,
I really admire you for this, Christine, because a lot of people don't know that they can go in and speak for themselves. It's very good. So,
probably because, the system, change doesn't happen really fast because they have to think about budget.
well, you're a good example, not for just for people with autism, but for anyone to speak up and get what they need in a very nice way. You've done it. And your book is entitled Working the Double Shift because, as you said, you doing a lot trying to go to school and do well, and then having autism as well, and working on that
Yeah.
as hard as you were academically. And why did you want to write this book?
Um, because I want to give like a raw, honest perspective feels like to live with autism, because a lot of the books out there, they're written by parenting professionals. And while they do describe autism, it's more like an instruction manual. And there's some of the things I don't agree with, because they're saying, well, it's easy for you to say because you don't have autism. But I do. So I could write a book. So I wanted to write a book detailing the emotional events that happened. It starts off as a blur, like my little kid years. I start like rushing. I don't go too much into detail about that. But once you get into middle school all the way up to college, it gets very more detailed. And you can see like some of the stuff that happened to me. And
I thought it was very worthwhile for anyone to read because it gives such good examples of autism. You know, we can read books about it, but to hear it firsthand from someone who has it, that's very helpful. And I especially like your one chapter that's titled, "You Don't Know What It's Like Living in My Body."
that's kind of like the main
Yeah.
chapter that I would always read at book readings, because it talks about my process. And I wrote that like during my college years because I was frustrated and I wanted people to know that this is what I have to live with.
Well, thanks for coming and talking about it and for writing your book, Christine.
Thank you, Marilyn, for inviting me again. It's a great honor.
We're happy you joined us for this program. Our programs are also available on YouTube through the Santa Clara County Library System and Roku. We look forward to having you join us again. Goodbye until next week.